After a lecture, you know.
Good.
Okay, now.
Well, it sounded like just having one of them on. We were never having that sound before,
Yeah.
so. So we will. Now, can we turn down the overhead? That's like almost a minute delay.
Oh, they gotta put you on a time delay over
I
here?
guess so.
Come
yeah.
on. City governor, come on.
We've got quality control in the background that'll pull
Yeah.
my stuff out.
We got the Hollywood bleepers back there. Y'all getting wild during your council meetings, apparently.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, got all the people.
Can you put it up on the YouTube screen so we can see if people are on? Oh, so that's where that was coming from? Is it streaming right now though? Okay, that's good. Oh, yeah, duh, because that would have been, okay, that makes sense, because we were playing it back, right? No, that's good, you close it out. Thanks, Lupe.
I've never gets to sit up here.
Always needs to be up front.
Gotta be boss lady.
Front and center, Amy. always.
And if y'all want.
Yeah.
Brandon?
It's gonna be interesting. Yeah, but there's some key differences there. We can talk about it later.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
What was your name?
Kate. Kate was sister.
Oh, yes, very nice. And sorry, like I said, I would have been a lot more involved.
That's totally okay. You're the one to talk.
No, that one.
That's the other
Other Amy.
Amy, yeah.
Multiple Amy.
Yeah. This is our Amy.
Yes.
That's their Amy.
Yeah, got it.
Fair.
Amy-
That's a
Amy
good
S.
distinction. Amy S.
Everyone, you're gonna go anywhere else.
Just to further the. The reference saw.
Oh, I got tons of engineering emails.
You know, for free right here.
I was married for a very, very short time before I was married.
We do have two projects.
Which was great.
The front sign in. You know, and then this flyer. Fire.
Yeah.
Can we talk about?
Oh, was it 3 of them?
But like, he looks like he's trying to explain and they look utterly confused,
Yeah.
and it was just,
That is really good.
takes a, yeah, it takes a fire. How many men does it take? Just Japanese, police chief, fire chief, and city manager.
Oh, that's the worst night.
That's great. But the best, like, look, he's holding out the paper to them and they look like super confused.
When I think of those types of things, like, you know, like that. Expensive.
That is
Have a bunch of
very
directors in a
Yes.
room, that's an expensive meeting.
I didn't think about it like that, but you're absolutely right.
$500 to put it in.
Right. Like,
And I think I've told you that.
vaguely.
Huge amounts of respect for the guy.
Right.
So cool. Right. With it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would imagine as well.
It's my
With him.
ampersand.
Yeah.
There's nothing up next Thursday.
Ask Trevor the word that he dropped yesterday. I had to stop the meeting and let him.
It's a good word. I
It's a
like
great
it.
word.
I like
It's a
it.
great word.
I just know the biological
Yeah.
term of it.
And that's all the examples it was used.
Attributes over time is not useful.
No.
Herndon.
Willow.
Yeah. Next to the Starbucks.
Honestly.
The person over there.
I don't mind doing it for you, I don't mind doing it for me.
It
Whatever.
will.
Like,
Oh, way out there. No.
Okay, I'll leave it there.
Wow.
Take this one off.
So chills.
I know what you're doing. Thanks. Oh, yeah, thank you, that's great. Yeah. All right, and I'm gonna try to speak into the mic because we got some folks on the onlines, so sorry if I seem just in one place, but you know, I'll go ahead and start with the intro and all of that. So welcome, thank you all for coming out today. We'll try to make a housing element community workshop a little bit less than boring. So my name is Clancy Taylor. I am with the California Coalition for Rural Housing. My colleague Kate Rose is also here and she'll introduce herself in a minute. So yeah, thank you all for coming. I know it's hot, I know it's a Friday, but thank you for your passion about Selma and housing elements. And folks online, thanks for joining. Please feel free to comment or do all your good things. All right, so brief, what are we gonna get talking about? What are we gonna get doing today? And before I get into all of that, if we do have interpretation services available, if folks need it, so comment or let us know if you need those services. So what are we doing today? Well, we're gonna do this brief presentation. We're gonna try to make it somewhat fun. Introductions, we're gonna go into what's in a housing element, what does it contain, and then move into the regional housing needs allocation, or the RENA, as you may have heard it called. Then some background data help us set the scene, and then really why we're here is the discussion. And we want to hear from you folks because data doesn't say everything. All right, and this effort is there's a lot of people helping out with this. So we are part of the California Coalition for Rural Housing. We're helping out with outreach for this effort, but this is a great team of consultants we have, starting at the Council of Governments level, and then the Council of Governments Fresno COG, Christine Kai's their deputy director managing this project. Then the consultant team, we have Placeworks, Provost and Pritchard, and Ascent all helping out. And Amy Sinsheimer is the project manager for the City of Selma. So a lot of brilliant folks working on the housing elements here in Fresno. So meeting objective, why are we here? Provide an update of the process of housing element, share some info about housing needs to help inform Selma's plan, and then start gathering initial community input about assets, opportunities, and issues here in the community. All right, so housing elements, what are they? Well, they're one of the 8 mandated parts of a general plan here in California. They must be updated every 8 years. So we are going into the 6th planning cycle, which goes from 2023 to 2031. And you might be thinking, oh, that seems a little far away. It doesn't start till 2023. But we'll get into the process and hey, this is awkward. Can you take this? Sorry, y'all. I have to take a call.
for a call from her doctor. Apologies. So the housing element is one of the 8 mandated elements of the general plan. It must be updated every 8 years. Unlike other elements of the general plan, this element must be certified by the state, and that's the State Department of Housing and Community Development. The adoption deadline for this element is December 31st, 2023. And the housing element is essentially the plan for the jurisdiction to accommodate its fair share of the regional housing need. Some things to note about the housing element. The housing element must show adequate zoning to meet the housing needs of the community. This usually means that in some cases there's ordinance or zoning code changes that are required as a result of the housing element. The housing element must include goals and policies to ensure the City of Selma provides adequate housing support for the entire community, including special needs groups. Special needs groups include groups like farm workers, seniors, female-headed households, people experiencing homelessness, people with disabilities, including developmental disabilities. It's important to note here that the housing element does not require the city to build the actual units. It does not provide funding to build those units, and it doesn't result in approval of specific residential projects or developments. So what's included in a housing element? We have a couple of slides here. This first slide shows the regional sections. Because this is a multi-jurisdictional effort, some of the background data will be region-wide, and then there will be a more specific to each location section or jurisdiction-specific sections of the housing element, and they're going to look pretty similar. So in the regional housing element, we have introduction, basically covers the purpose of the housing element and the process. The county-wide background report, which includes all of the really good demographic analysis of housing characteristics, like how old the housing stock is county-wide. It includes an analysis of fair housing. This is a new requirement per AB 686. It requires all jurisdictions to affirmatively further fair housing. We'll talk a little bit more about that maybe later, but there will be both a region-wide AFFH analysis and a jurisdiction-specific one. And then this section also includes a county-wide housing goals and policies. So there are regional goals and policies that each of the jurisdictions will agree to. And then there will be like specific programs and policies that the jurisdictions can tier from in order to meet those regional needs. And then there's a summary of the sites inventory, which again, just shows all of the land available to meet the housing need for each economic segment of the community. So here's that slide. I told you it was going to look a little similar. This is the local sections of the housing element. So it includes most of the same information as the regional, except jurisdiction specific. So I'm not going to spend too much time in this slide, but I will just add that in addition to those sections we went over before, again, there were going to be local policies and implementation programs that tier from those regional goals. And then there's also going to be an evaluation of how the city did on the previous housing element. Did we meet those goals? Did we build that, or did we have enough appropriately zoned land to meet the housing need last cycle? So here's the project schedule. We're right now in the outreach phase, and we'll continue outreach actually through October of 2022. Once we've compiled all of the feedback that we received during the outreach, the consultant team is going to wrap up an admin draft of the housing element. We'll release a public review draft for members of the public to provide feedback on, and that's anticipated for February of 2023. We'll do some outreach again. So we'll come back out with the actual admin draft of the elements so that you can all react to the policies and the programs that have been developed. And then once we get feedback from you, we'll modify the draft, send it to State HCD for their review. State HCD will give comments on that draft. We'll go back and forth with State HCD. They have 2 review periods. We anticipate them ending in about September of 2023, with the goal of finalizing the housing element and getting to City Council for adoption hearings by December of 2023. So there's kind of a lot that we're fitting in a relatively short window, but we do have ample opportunities for outreach throughout the process and hearing from you all your reactions to the housing element draft. And if folks are joining us on the live stream today, be sure to comment and let us know if you have any questions as we go through this presentation. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, or the RHNA. So the RHNA is determined first starting at the state level. The state projects the future housing needs for each income category and then distributes those units that it anticipates needing over the 8-year planning period to regional bodies of governments known as councils of governments, or COGs. So once the regional COG gets their allocation, they must develop a methodology to then distribute the units to each jurisdiction within their region. This methodology has to be approved by state HCD, and it usually has to do with the anticipated growth within the jurisdiction, as well as the current population of the jurisdiction. So Fresno COG for this cycle was responsible for distributing a RHNA of 58,298 units. From there, the COG sends the local cities and counties their allocated units. And then as a part of the housing element update, the cities and counties must then accommodate enough land at appropriately zoned densities to be able to provide for housing at all of the income categories. So I'm going to show the next slide. It's going to have some data on it, but I'll kind of orient your attention. So here's the overall of the Fresno COG RHNA. And I just want to orient your attention to the Selma numbers. They're bolded in the table on the right. Selma is responsible for 1,492 units as a part of their RHNA. That's about 3% of the county's overall RHNA allocation. And we have a pie chart on the left that kind of shows where the other jurisdictions fall in proportion. So you can tell from here that the city of Fresno has the highest RHNA allocation with 63%, followed by Clovis with 15%, and unincorporated Fresno County with 4%. So Selma is below that with 3%. Now we have a little bit of housing element background data. The consultant team is going to use this background data as well as other metrics in order to assess the housing need for the community and prepare adequate programs and policies to meet that need. So who is considered low income? In Fresno County, a household of 4 at the median income level is making about $83,000 a year. A household income of 4 earning 80% of or less of the median income is considered low income. And that number in Fresno County is about $62,000 annually. Approximately 43% of the households countywide fall within the lower income category. We have a table here that breaks down the low income category further into very low and extremely low. I think the most important thing to note from this slide is just the typical occupations that you might see folks in the lower income category fall within. Right, they're your mail carriers, vet assistants, and then for the extremely low income category, folks that you might see on a fixed income such as Social Security income. So considering that, how affordable is Fresno County? Fresno County countywide had a 15% increase in their median home sales price between May of 2021 and May of 2022. So the median home sales price increased from 346 to 400,000. Selma had a slightly lower increase, but still a substantial increase of 10%. So home sale prices increased from 272,000 about to 300,000 over the last year. And that data is from about 17 units that were sold during that year period. So who is affected by high housing prices within the region? Folks that are overpaying for household expenses like their mortgage or their rent are folks that are paying 30% or more of their income. As you can see here on this table, we have the city of Selma. In the city of Selma, 42% of households are overpaying for their housing, again, paying more than 30% of their income. When you consider folks that are severely overpaying or paying 50% or more for housing, that percentage is about 18%. And you can see that you can kind of compare it countywide to the other jurisdictions here. You can see that unincorporated Fresno County has some lower percentages, right? 29% of folks are overpaying and 13% are severely overpaying. This slide shows the percentage of extremely low income households across the region. I just want to direct your attention to Selma again. You can see that folks within that low income category, we have 10% of folks within extremely low income who are making less than 30% of that area median income, right? That $80,000 mark. We have 17% of folks making very low income salaries, or 30 to 50% of the AMI. And then we have 23% of people making in that low income category of 50 to 80% of the median income. And that's compared to Fresno County all the way on the left side. That's the overall Fresno County numbers, slightly lower in terms of the ELI, VLI, and LI, the lower incomes. So that brings us to the discussion. We have about 6 discussion questions that we wanted to get your feedback on. But before we do that, I want to pause there and ask if there are any questions about some of the information that I presented, either here in this room or virtually. So the question is this program funded by HUD? So the housing, which program do you mean? The development of the housing element in particular?
Like HC.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So the housing element itself is an effort that each of the jurisdictions are paying in order to produce the document. But when it comes to actual affordable housing that might be developed, that comes a little bit further down the line. And oftentimes you're right, developers that are affordable housing developers have fund sources from state and federal, like HUD or HCD, correct? But again, the housing element itself is not going to result in building any actual affordable housing units. It just kind of sets the plan for where those units might be. Good question, thank you.
And frankly, part of the onus for creating the housing elements is because if the city doesn't, then essentially a lot of those state funds start getting blocked. And the state makes it very difficult to utilize, for Selma to utilize its own local control. So it's kind of one of those, we got to play the state's game so we can keep getting money and all the other things.
Any other questions from the audience? Okay, we can move to the discussion portion. It's the more fun portion anyway. We have the discussion questions here listed on the slide. We also have discussion questions like documents on the table. If you'd prefer to provide us written feedback, we'll take that back with us and scan it in. But I'd like to ask Clancy to take some notes. Thanks, Clancy. And we can kind of go through these together. The first discussion question we wanted your feedback on today is, what do you think are the most critical housing issues in the city of Selma? Yeah.
Hello, Erlinda Martinez. One of the most critical issues in Selma when it pertains to housing. Yeah, it pertains that the housing prices are extremely high. So we had talked about housing for senior citizens. How can most senior citizens cannot afford a $450,000 home? That is a ridiculous price. Then another thing is, what is the incentive for some of the people to come and purchase homes here? I lived in Selma and they used to give out some sort of like grants or something for first-time home buyers. And that meant either new homes or remodeled homes. Why is it that we don't have more of those programs? And also, we should really have areas like others, well, we visit a lot, Illinois. They have different types of housing available over there. They have duplex, they have townhomes, they have different things that people that are on a certain income level could afford. We're not talking about 450,000. We're not talking about 500,000. We're talking about something more reasonable. We're talking about maybe 300,000. Why is it we don't have, developers that are interested in coming into a community like ours and develop something like that? Also, because I've been waiting for this. I have my own home. I'm blessed, but how come other places are also facilitating tiny homes? Because if you're looking at a $150,000 home versus a $450,000 home, and you're on a low income, but you just want a home, you don't want to live in an apartment. Why is it that we don't have designated areas like that in Selma? We've gone to that point that, will be the next, and I hate to exaggerate, but I mean, next San Francisco or something. Seriously, a lot of people are coming over here because it's affordable for them. But actually, 450 in this area is not affordable. That's my biggest concern. We need areas, we need to get developers to come to the city and develop communities that are affordable, and we need the funding for it. Thank you.
Okay, so I heard a couple different things there. I heard more affordable housing, seniors being priced out, incentives or programs for first-time home buyers, and then different diversity of housing types, things like duplexes, tiny homes, townhomes. This is all great feedback. I am curious if someone from the city wanted to talk about any changes to the zoning code for accessory dwelling units or anything related to SB 9. Just not to put you on the spot, but I figure you might know.
Oh, no, that's fine. So right now, the city of Selma is going through a zoning ordinance update to refresh a lot of the residential zone development standards and regulations that the city has to be compliant with a lot of the state laws that have recently been passed. So that would allow for the availability of different types of housing, such as like the tiny homes and things like that. But all while we're still very aware of the state laws that are currently in place right now. So in the event that the municipal code isn't consistent with state law still supersedes that. So if you were to come to us with like a tiny home or like an ADU, we will defer to state law and then also approve that project.
Thank you. I just pulled up a slide that has kind of a breakdown of the housing types in Fresno County, and then Selma is bolded here. So there is, a majority, like the rest of the region, the majority of Selma is single family homes. So definitely an opportunity to kind of increase the diversity here, or try to look at policies and programs to do that. Any other thoughts on that first discussion question?
Question I had, or a couple, is my house in particular, and I'm sure there's many homes in the city that are the same. We've got like two families because we can afford getting into a 270, 280, but it's been very hard because, everything we could to prepare for these things, and the availability is not there. I understand we have designated areas, but there's no infrastructure. And there's a fight between the city and developers on, hey, who's going to pay for it? So the citizens are basically on standby, forcing prices to go up, I believe, which makes it unaffordable for people like us and my younger generation who's trying to get their first home just as well as we're still trying to get our first home. And we're stuck in a rental because the city's not ready for it.
Hi, my name is Karnayal Sender. I'm in a real estate in Selma. And Selma doesn't have adequate housing. And Selma is farming community town. We don't have industries. Okay, so people move from different cities from, north and south. Yes, they can afford housing over here. But people from Selma, they cannot afford a high price housing. We are shortage of low income housing, condos, townhouses. Okay, in 2014, when I ran for city council, I cried for it, but I haven't seen any changes. So definitely we need funds, we need to uplift our community, we need to provide a nice affordable housing. And this gentleman said that yes, infrastructure is there always been clash between the builders and the city, CID, water district, who's gonna pay for what, So we have those problems, I guess we need to fix those problems at the same token. Thank you.
Both for your comments. Clancy, would you mind reiterating what we've heard so far on that first discussion question?
Yeah, so are we still on? Probably. All right, so for the first one, we have very high prices. I added existing residents are having issues with affordability. Seniors being priced out. We have incentives / programs for first-time home buyers and just home buyers in general. Different / diversity of housing types, things like duplexes, townhomes, affordable housing, low-income housing, tiny homes, ADUs. They're all on there. And then we also have little housing stock, not enough homes, and then families and people doubling up. Kind of what you described, just multiple families and a dwelling that's supposed to be for one, but we're making it work because what choices do we have? Yes.
I'm gonna move us to the next discussion question, but feel free if you have any other thoughts on critical housing issues, please feel free to continue to speak on that. The next question we've already started talking about a little bit. It's what do you think are the housing types most needed in this community? So we heard duplexes, townhomes, condos, things that are a little bit maybe smaller scale, more affordable for seniors and other folks that are maybe in the low income category. Any other thoughts about housing types that we need more of?
Some of the personnel from Erlinda Martinez again. Some personnel from Selma stated that, of course, we have to obey the laws of the state when it comes to additions. So how can we move forward then? For example, this gentleman that was talking, there's more than one family living in one home because they're priced out. Who could afford $3,000 a month? And everybody's making, minimum wage. So how have they promoted something where a family like theirs, if they have a big lot in the back, could have an addition without so much red tape? Because there's a lot of us, I'm blessed, like I said, I have my home, but I'm pretty sure I'll reach that point where I'm gonna need to go live with one of my daughters. And let's just assume that she's got a backyard and they're gonna make a mother-in-law house or, little one. I'm not talking about a mansion. Have they addressed that issue? Is there something already that the city has addressed for those situations?
Through the zoning ordinance update that's currently ongoing, we are adding those policies to the municipal code that are consistent with state law, which allow for those types of housing. Right now, ADUs are already allowed by the state and per our municipal code. However, it expands upon that. So for instance, SB 9, a new housing law that just came into effect a year ago, allows for a duplex to be constructed in any single family residential zone district. So there's that opportunity, but also you can add additions easier to your existing homes in such places like your backyard without any stringent local municipal code requirements attached to that. So it does offer those options to you without a lot of the regulations and red tape that we've seen in the past. What the city is working on now currently is to provide pamphlets and flyers, graphics that are easily understood rather than reading code sections or policies in a municipal handbook. So that's what we're currently working on right now, and we can advertise that on our website so people are more educated on the types of options that they actually have.
And since the city is moving forward on that, more about what time is all of this going to be put in place?
We've been in the process of updating our zoning ordinance for the past couple months. We just had another meeting with the consultant that is currently working on that. So we're hoping to get a draft either to public hearing or a finalized version ready for public hearing sometime later this fall, early winter.
Thank you. That's some really good information.
Housing development. So we hear sometimes that apartment complexes are gonna be pushed, and these are low-income apartment complexes. I know it's been suggested on Danuba and there, across from Walmart, you know, things like that. But why are we so focused on those? Because we've got, like I said earlier, my son and daughter-in-law, they can't move into those places because they worked hard to be full-time workers. So because they make too much, it doesn't benefit people like that. We don't have these housing choices that we can jump into for families.
Yeah.
So why are we so focused on bringing those in, bringing down the property value of the surrounding homes for those apartments or things that get pushed?
Mm-hmm.
And then why are we as a city not pushing that infrastructure? Because I thought already on the, correct me if I'm wrong, Dinuba going past Abraham, this was already set up for homes and put infrastructure. And I'm understanding there's developments on standby, but the city doesn't want to do it. Why?
There has been some approved plans for construction of subdivisions to the north and to the northeast of the city of Selma. And you're absolutely correct. There is a infrastructure issue in that northern region that is stifling a lot of development out there. The city has put together an infrastructure funding program in order to be more self-sufficient and stop relying on developers to pay their fair share for these types of infrastructure projects, because like you had said, rather than waiting on a developer's time to provide housing, we want to make sure that the area is prime for development so it's more attractive for developers so the city can grow, offer more housing opportunities, therefore reducing the overall cost citywide of some of those houses because there's more supply and there's more options. Right now, the city is in a really interesting spot where the city limits, within the city limits, we're about 80% developed. So there's not already a lot of land available for development in the city, which further increases prices because there's not a lot of places to go. I think the example came up like San Francisco. They can't grow anywhere else out, so they go up and it makes things more expensive. So the city of Selma is in an opportunity to expand our sphere of influence, which is currently in the process, to open up more land for development. But that also takes into account costs of providing more infrastructure out there. So that's all under the overview of that infrastructure funding program, which we're using state grants, loans, things like that to help fund that so that then we can have the city grow.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, have we been on stagnant standby for that for quite a while? Because that was already planned years ago.
Right.
Where
So
it's just,
those large scale developments have been in the works and they have been approved before my time here. Those issues have been persistent. We're in a good position right now with staff that we have right here. We have a good team in place and the consistency of staff to where we can push through these larger programs that take, months and months some issues that the city has had in the past is different staff members touching different projects at different times, and the consistency is just not there to really push something over the finish line. But now we're more hopeful that that won't change, or that will change, and we'll be able to push through these larger programs to get that funding to help the city grow.
Okay, any other thoughts on the housing types most needed in Selma? I think we already started moving towards this next question, which is when assessing new housing development that might be built in the next 8 to 10 years, what should Selma's most important consideration be? We've talked a lot about infrastructure and making sure that we have the infrastructure in place to be able to grow, to keep the housing prices at a livable level. What else have we talked about? Any other considerations for the next 8 to 10 years that you want to think about? We've talked, I think infrastructure is really the big one here so far. I'll pause here. I'll also ask if we have anybody online asking any questions.
Yeah, we'll wait till we get back to confirm that. I don't have any though.
I've been holding it up for like months.
Yeah, come. Now
Okay, well, this is all great too, but one thing we're gonna have to consider too is when we're considering housing, we're gonna have to consider our parks. Because if we build them, we gotta have areas so the kids could be safe and out of the street. We have to make streets safer. I live off of Dinuba, and it's not a street, it's a freeway. If you were to go out in the afternoon, you'll see all those big diesel trucks playing races, getting from one place to the other. It's really important. I mean, my daughter lives in the Sunnyside area. I think they're, I want to say Syntax, I don't know. Can't remember right now, but they have these beautiful walk areas with trees, not like the ones I have in my backyard, because those are dead practically with no water. I'm not, I'm being sarcastic, but I'm being truthful. If you go take a little drive on Dinuba, that side of the area is just falling apart most of the time. And I'm always complaining about it because I'm retired, so I got some time now. But we need to think about those things. Okay, we're gonna make the homes. We're gonna invest and make our city bigger. Yes, we do need to increase our sphere of influence. I know that. I've been in one too many meetings before. So all of that needs to be taken into consideration. And also it's great to have all of the parks in the world, but wouldn't it be just nice to have the community park right there where you live? Instead of having to go to 1 or 2 parks in the whole entire city of Selma, because Fresno's doing it. We need to think big so we could be big. We got this 99, it's gonna work for us. We need to promote more businesses in the city, because if you build them, the rest of the people will come to live here. And that's how we're gonna get the big park we want. Meanwhile, we're not gonna get nothing. We're gonna lose people and they're gonna go somewhere else and they're living crowded. And it just gets us nowhere. Sorry.
Well, I'm incredibly excited that you brought that up. Obviously, my name is Amy Smart and I am the new Community Services Director. And the reason that I'm actually here today is because included with this housing element in the future and future development is the parks discussion. And it's something that I'm incredibly passionate about. I mean, the team here can tell you. And so that's actually why I'm here. I'm not necessarily in the housing or planning department on that side as Trevor and Lupe and all of them are, but I am community services, and we do need to make sure that we are tapping into our resources as we're building these houses and work with these developers to create the green space that our community is really going to need, because we don't have adequate yet and we need to work on that. So thank you very much for bringing that up. And I can tell you that's exactly why I'm here today, is to make sure that is part of the discussion.
I feel so formal with the mic and everything.
All right.
I'm like, oh.
All right, I've been in Selma since I was 12. And growing up here, Selma was great. I think we've been, as a city, focusing a lot of low income. A lot of, and it has its place. It helped me out at one point in my life where I had nothing. But building so many of these low incomes and so many of these possible homeless camps and things like that. When you own your own home, it's your American dream. You're gonna take pride in it. And right now, you drive through Selma, there's a lot of beat up places. A lot of, the city, it just looks run down, trashy. I still love this place. And I'm here because I'd like to see a difference in Selma. Over the next 8-10 years, if you're building homes that people like us who are working, we want to own something to take pride in it. I have a beautiful truck because I'm paying on it. I own it. I'm taking pride in it. And I'd like to someday be able to have my own home and take care of it and be a good. When you're opening up lots and putting in this infrastructure, you got people that are working, people that can invest into the city. We continue bringing in, these low income units. Who can't. City. And so it changes the way the city's gonna be, I hope it doesn't just sound wrong, but it's like you've got a lot of hard workers here that want to buy a home, and there's no home to buy. So we need to target, things like finding to get. I don't want to go to Fresno. I want to stay in Selma. That happened.
No, I appreciate that comment. I'll piggyback if you don't mind. That whole taking pride in Selma has really been the focus. I mean, our leadership team can tell you over the last couple of months, in addition to the planning of the future, it's also how do we take better care of what we have currently, what we have in our asset list. So I know that our code enforcement has been out there trying their best to clean up that blight. Our police chief has been very adamant that it's time to start to clean up certain areas of our city, because in addition, while we do want this growth and all of that, we are committed to how do we clean up what we currently have. So I appreciate you recognize or mentioning that, because it does give us the opportunity to highlight the amazing work that our code enforcement has been doing the last couple of weeks. And we sometimes get pushback from the people that we may be enforcing on. But what we realize is that there are citizens out there that want us to clean up Selma and clean up some of those areas. So thank you for that. And again, I encourage you, if you start to drive around, you might notice a difference, because I've already noticed a difference, because we really do want to take pride in Selma as well. So thank you.
Say too that the housing element is again about making sure that we're meeting the housing needs for all economic segments of the community, right? So that number that we showed on the screen about 1,500 for the RENA allocation for the city of Selma isn't just at the low income level. That number will be broken down further, and we'll actually be looking for unit allocation for above moderate, and low income. So just to clarify. Sorry, you mean how do we determine the RENA breakdown? Yeah, that's a good question. I think that there's like a set methodology that you can use from HCD, or you can kind of do your own methodology. I don't know how far the city and the consultant team have gotten into breaking down their RENA number yet.
The RENA numbers come from it starts with the census data. So everybody has the census sent to their house, their household, and then they get the estimated population of a city, because obviously everybody is not filling out their pamphlets, or they're not filling them out accurately, which, I mean, that's totally understandable. Then that data gets synthesized by the state, and then it gets distributed to HCD, and then HCD then takes a look at the existing land uses, which the land uses are parcels just on a color-coded map highlighting, where things go, commercial here, residential here, industrial here. And those land uses for residential specifically have different densities tied to them. So like a single family land use would have a typical density of like maybe 3 units to 8 units per acre. And so they take those numbers, they estimate the amount of units that are available, and then they take that number and then they multiply that by the estimated citywide average household size. And then that helps them then take a look at, okay, what does the city have? And how much does the city have available to grow? They also take into account numbers such as the estimated growth of the region too, to see where the city's at with their population and how much they're planned on growing. And then they factor in that number as well. So it's a bunch of different factors that go into play, but that's kind of the rough, in a nutshell, explanation of how that number kind of comes about. And then obviously that number is then negotiated to an extent between all of the member agencies of, like, for instance, Fresno COG, which were a part of the City of Selma. And this is the process that we're going through, especially with CCRH, in doing this multi-jurisdictional housing element, because it's a good opportunity for collaboration between all the cities in Fresno County. So in the event a city doesn't think that they can provide that much housing, then they can reduce their amount and then give it to another city or vice versa.
To go back to the discussion questions. Nancy, can I have an update on where we're at with considerations for new development?
All right, so I got streamlining ADUs and just making housing development easier. No offense, some of this is not an uncommon problem. It's something that I think jurisdictions were finally figuring out that, folks, it takes a lot of time and thought to get a development project done, even if it is a simple granny flat at your house. So, there are some things in place, and I'm glad to hear that the city's kind of streamlining and making some change to that zoning code. But yeah, how can we make that connection easier between the city and the residents, Because oftentimes it's not gonna lie. All right, other considerations, parks and city amenities with the new housing, things like safe streets, water. And I put holistic community development, not just focusing on, well, we got 5 more units, but 5 really great livable things that add to the community instead of just units. Got green space on there because I'm an advocate and I'm going to keep putting it on there. And the big things, community look and feel. A Selma to be proud of, getting people to stay here in Selma because, it's hard to stay in a place if you can't afford a house, you can't afford to stay here. So yeah, a lot of different things, but I think these are all really great. Is there anything else we don't have on here? Now, if I could wave my magic wand and make this all happen, I would.
That's the trick, right?
That's still trying to find that silver bullet.
So the next question is kind of a catch-all, just another opportunity. If there's anything else you wanted to add that we haven't asked you specifically about, if there are folks in the audience who maybe haven't stepped up to the mic yet, but came here to say something and or ask a question, now's the opportunity. We're on number 4, if you're following along on the discussion question. If we don't have anything specific for 4, we can also move on to 5. Any suggestions for soliciting additional housing element feedback? So we reached this group of the community, but what can we do for that next round of outreach that's planned for the winter to get more people in to give feedback on the housing element?
Erlinda Martinez. Like I said, I'm retired, so 2 p.m. is no problem for me. But if you're gonna look for the people that really need the services, it would be nice to consider maybe after 5. A lot of the farm workers, when it's hot like right now, they'll probably be home right now. But then how about the other workers, the workers that work in different white collar, blue collar jobs that have different hours? How are we gonna reach them? Have you considered, how do you send this message out? Because I know you have social media. I'm one of those that will look at your social media. I actually do. And then I also look, I know, I told you I have a lot of time. Social media, right? But how about the events that the city sometimes has? Do we have a booth at every event? How are we reaching the developers? I don't know, maybe you're a real estate agent. How are we reaching our real estate agents? Is there something exclusively for them? So that they could say, hey, well, guess what? We got some, like a grant. First time buyer? Okay, we're gonna get you some money. Here you go. Maybe you could qualify. How do we have something where we could get that information to them? Because if he has a customer that's just short a little bit, and that's it, you can't go for more money anywhere else, because you can't even ask for a loan for your house other than the loan you're already applying. So is there extra funding information to get that? So I would say also the option that you're gonna send it in Spanish and English and any other dominant language, that is available in this community. So are we addressing those needs also? Like, I know there's excuse me if I'm incorrect, is there like Sikh community, a large church across from our church? How are we getting a hold of the members there? Letting them know, hey, did you know that there's funding for this? So that they could spread it out to all of the other people that go to church? Something. I know there's a pastors committee in the city, because our pastor attends that. Are we extending that information to them? Because they all spread it out. Catholic Church is another one. I'm sorry, it's just endless. How are we addressing that? Your website is beautiful, but it's complicated. I like the way that it was before, because now it's a little bit complicated. But I'm willing to take that extra step to find out. You have excellent staff that when you call them, Reina, she'll say, Erlinda, just a minute, let me help you. But then not everybody is in Erlinda that's willing to come to City Hall and get that information. So maybe a little bit easier, we just push a little button and it just pops up easier. I don't know. Thank you.
Or outreach to churches. 9 to 5, cannot come to a meeting time at 2 in the afternoon. Definitely, these are all great. And I would love to get the church information from you afterwards so that we can hit up your pastor for the next round of outreach.
Yeah, and also with this effort, so we're not only doing community workshops, but we have stakeholder interviews throughout. So we've been reaching out to different community-based orgs, developers, homeless services folks, and doing more in-depth interviews with them. Sitting down and just having those couple hour conversations. And then we're also doing things like we talk with the city council and the planning commission, which is essentially this presentation, just more technical. So we are trying a few things to get, more than just a 2 p.m. on a Friday afternoon. We found that like churches and community groups, especially in smaller towns, like we reach out and I'm talking to 50 Sanger because they have a whole task force. So yeah, like all these little women's clubs are another one we found that can be like the women's group or the chamber. So yeah, it's just, how we're always taking suggestions, and thank you, because we can always do better. I don't know, that's always my thing. Like, you can do a great job, but you can always do better at community outreach. We will always miss someone. So, but yeah, we've had a lot of success starting to get out and reach, the churches kind of offer a bridge to some communities that can be a little bit harder to reach. So yeah, we're trying all our resources, so thank you.
I love the idea.
Yeah, we definitely do. Soma has a lot of community activities, so a lot of opportunities to be able to have more information. And we did have at the last couple city events that we had, we did have the flyers that were provided earlier for this workshop, both in English and in Spanish. And we had also talked about if it was going to be needed, additional languages such as Punjab for the Sikh community, and making sure that we were going to have availability for that. And I believe our second workshop that's planned, the discussion was to have that one in the evening, right? We had actually said we'd do one during the day and one during the evening to try, hopefully, to cover both of those times so that those can be there during the day, great. Those that can't be there during the day but could make an evening meeting,
And
and
then,
have that as well.
the multi-jurisdictional housing element, we have a website too, and that is available. So right now, only in 4 languages, but the 4 most popular for Fresno County. So it's Punjabi, Hmong, and then Spanish and English on there. But if there's any other like languages or anything, let us know, because we can make the fancy consultants do this for us. But yeah, this is also another place y'all can sign up for info. We'll still be around. We'll still be coming out for the next about year or so. But a website is always helpful, and hopefully it's easier than Selma's, but no guarantee.
Hey, now,
Hey,
you let us know you have any feedback on, hey, this is difficult to navigate, please. Those are the type of comments that we always need to staff to try to make it better. Uh-huh. That's actually called Rockwell Pond Park. Yeah, and we're still in negotiations with the county to buy the majority of that area, and the long-term vision for that is for a regional park. It is. It is, yeah, it's actually a ponding basin area, so it's for runoff, and it will remain that way, but it will still have park space uses, some above grade, some continue down below grade, so it would be joint use. Yeah, yep, unfortunately.
Today, I hope and pray to God our home. Happened already like
I would like to touch on the down payment assistance program too, because I know for a long, long time that was really, really successful and very well received in every community that it was in. At that time, the state of California allowed local agencies to have, and my apologies if this was spoken about while I had to step out, but the state of California allowed local agencies to have what are called redevelopment agencies or RDAs. And all of those programs happened within the redevelopment agencies. And then I guess it's been, a little over a decade now. The state took away the ability for local agencies to have that. And so many of those programs and a local agency's ability and even legality, in all honesty, to engage in any of those activities was stripped away. And so there's so many programs that were very successful, very well received, and very helpful on the local level that the local agencies are not allowed to be engaged in anymore. So now the challenge is to work with those that are either on the nonprofit side, like self-help enterprises, that took that model and implemented it into a business where they will actually have people come in and you and your neighbors, who will ultimately be your neighbors, all build the homes together, and through sweat equity, do a lot of those payments. So it's now working for us as the local agency, working with those outside parties that still can qualify for that funding, and now partnering with them and doing everything that we can do on the government and the legislative side to try to help attract those dollars to this area. Yeah. Yeah.
With
Yeah.
wage.
Yeah, there's still an organization that's actually called Self-Help Enterprises that use that same, they're based out of Visalia. They've done some great projects. I know they just finished about 120 homes in the city of Reedley. So I mean, right here in Fresno County, they work and are actively working still. I've been absolutely trying to lure them to Selma for some time. So we'll continue to work on that. I know right now they're literally just at capacity for what they have staff to be able to handle. Selma's lining up a lot of really good things and addressing a lot of the infrastructure challenges that we've had for years to then make housing and commercial growth possible. And once those pipes are in the ground and that capacity issue is gone, we're going to see a lot of growth happen in a hurry, which is a good thing. You know, more rooftops, more choices, more options for your more people that you have here, the more services that are required. So the more commercial opportunities and comes in there. So it all builds on each other.
Have any final comments or questions? Well. Yeah, so
Yeah, the next type of, so we're having essentially a similar session with council and planning commission on Tuesday night here. And so that next round of public outreach in winter of 2023. So what's gonna happen is the consultant team, they're up writing the draft of the housing element now. And so they will release that draft in January, and then essentially that's gonna be the time of, hey, the public, come comment, this is what their initial thoughts were. Come comment on the sites, do y'all agree with where they placed the proposed sites? Do you agree with the programs and policies? Did they completely miss something? And so that's likely going to be a 40-day process with public comment. So yeah, that's when, the high level of what we're covering. And then also the draft will be available for public viewing and comment and all of that. So it takes this, it combines it with a bunch of the data and the stakeholder interviews to come up with that housing element. So long way to say yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
So like Clancy was saying, there's one study session with city council coming up
Tuesday.
on Tuesday. I don't have
6 p.m. is when the
6 p.m. here.
Yep.
I'm here. It'll be a very similar presentation if you do end up coming, but like Clancy was saying, it's our opportunity to talk to city council and brief housing element and get them up to speed too. That's another opportunity to come out. Tuesday, 6 p.m. And then, yes, second round of outreach, February or March of 2023. If you gave us your email, you will definitely get notified about that. Well, turning off the live stream.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I'll say goodbye to the live stream folks. Thank you for joining us.
and thank you all for coming out on a hot Friday afternoon. Exactly. That was me this afternoon. I know, I really went to my car to make a phone call and I was like, never mind.